Welcome to Sam's How To. This is another part of the ultimate VRay guide. Now today we're going to be talking about three more options from the VRay tab. The first one is the image filter, second one is the global DMC, and the third one is the environment settings. Alright, so let's go to the first one. Let's go to the render settings in here, go to image filter. Now the image filter, in the previous episodes we talked about the image sampler, the anti-aliasing, the bucket image samplers, and this is how VRay controls the colors in curved textures. Now the image filter does almost the same, but it's related more to the sharpness and blurring of the image itself. Now you can enable it from here, as you can see. If you enable this, you'll get a lot of options in here about the image filters. Now if you check with me these images in here, now as you can see, here are some images to explain how exactly these things work. As you can see, by the way, this is from the Chaos Group documents from their website. I'll leave the link below. Now in here you can see a few examples about what happens with the edges when choosing multiple image filters. Now you need this if you have a scene that has a lot of details in it and you want to have them sharpened and you want to have them clear, or of course if you have some areas and some places in the scene that you want to render and leave them blurry. Of course you can use this also if you're using an animation. If you want to produce some blur, you can use these filters. Now the one thing that you need to know about this, if you use one of these image filters with the progressive image sampler type in here, it's going to take a long time to render, since this is going to add a lot more passes to the render. It's going to take a long time. Of course it's going to be more accurate and more sharp, but it's going to take a long time. If you would like, the most efficient way is to use the bucket image sampler if you're going to use any of these filters in here. Alright, now moving on to the next option in here, which is a global DMC. Now global DMC stands for deterministic Monte Carlo. Now Monte Carlo is a sampling method for evaluating blurry values like anti-aliasing, depth of field, and direct elimination, and so on. And VRay uses this variant of the Monte Carlo, and it's called deterministic Monte Carlo, DMC. And this predefines a set of samples for rendering. It allows re-rendering an image to always produce the same exact result. Now, there are a few things that determine exactly the actual number of samples that DMC sampler uses for values, for blurry values. These things are three. Now the first one is the subdiv values for the particular blurry effect, and this value can be multiplied in here. If you can see, the subdiv's multiplier can be multiplied in here. The other option is the importance of a value. For example, dark glossy reflections can do with fewer samples than brighter ones. And also the third thing is the variance in noise. If VRay decides that the samples are not very different from each other's, then the value can do with fewer samples. Now as you can see in here, this defines the minimum samples that VRay should take before they decide that this is enough and this is a good amount of sampling before stopping and moving on. Now in here also, if you can see, two values in here define the amount and the noise threshold, the adaptive amount. Now, as I just said, VRay will take samples, and if these samples are not very different, Now this value in here will determine how different or not different these samples are. Now the value of 1 will mean full adaptation and the value of 0 will mean no adaptation at all. Noise threshold define the amount of noise that will be allowed in the scene. Now if you can see here, I've chosen to put a very low amount here to keep the noise to the minimum. Now if you go back in here, now lock the noise pattern, you would choose this option only if you want multiple frames to be rendered for exactly the same number of noise patterns, which means that VRay will not take any more samples for the next frame and the next one and so on, and will keep adding the same value for each frame. I wouldn't recommend using that though. Now in here, a very important one. Now use local subdivs. Use local subdivs will allow subdivisions from materials, from lights, from all the objects in the scene to be rendered with their own values that you have defined in the material editor itself or whatever else. If you uncheck this one, if you turn it off, the VRay will decide automatically what subdivs to use. So I would leave this checked for the final image that you want and turn it off in the test renders and so on. Now, when it's turned on, you can multiply the sample by whatever value that you want to increase the values, which will increase, of course, the precision and make your render look better. Now, third option in here is the environment. Now, of course, the environment is something that you will define and you will control in the environment section itself, which can be found if you press on 8 on your keyboard. We're not gonna get to this right now. There's a lot of options in here that we'll explain later, but right now I'm only explaining the options in here. Now they're very similar, all of these options. The first one is of course to enable the environment. If you press this one, it will enable the global illumination environment, which will take this color in here and apply it to the environment around you, for example, the sky. And this, of course, will be disabled by whatever map that you have or whatever HDRI image that you have, or if you have the VRay sun and its environment. But from here, you can control whatever color that you want for the sky to be. You can have a multiplier for it. You can use a map to define the glossiness or the reflections for things in your sky, whatever your sky is. Now in here, these are completely similar. Reflection and refraction. When you turn this on, you can control the reflection and reflection of your environment. Like for example, if you have a sky that has stars in it or whatever custom environment that you want to create, you can control the reflection and refraction from here with these values. The same thing in here, it's the same exact thing, but this is only for refraction. You can control this on its own from here, and here same thing for the matte environment. You can control the color, multiplier, and also add a map. Now that was it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press the like button, subscribe to my channel to get new updates and get notifications when I post new videos. Peace.